Last time on Let's Talk Dandadan, our heroes faced and defeated the Flatwoods monster, only to be left exhausted and open to a turbo granny attack. Thankfully, Momo's grandma, Granny Seiko, arrives to save the day. After a hard-fought race between our heroes and the turbo granny, she's seemingly defeated. What's next? Let's find out on today's episode of Let's Talk Dandadan, the Acrobatic Silky Arc.
Good morning, good evening, and good night, whatever time of day it is when you are watching this. But thank you for joining us once again for the Let's Talk Dandadan series. Today, we are going to do the entire Acrobatic Silky Arc. So, stay tuned because we got that coming up right now. But before we start on that, I would just like to tell y'all and remind you this is not a substitution for reading the actual manga or watching the anime. This is if you want to get caught up. If you don't know what's going on, go read it. Then come back, come talk, listen to me talk about it, see what you think. You know what I'm saying? But without further ado, we are now going to get into the Acrobatic Silky Arc, starting off with Dandadan Chapter 9. So, let's get into it. So we start off Chapter 9, basically where Chapter 8 left off. Momo and Okuran have met up, they're talking, they're walking to class, and now they've gotten to their respective classes and they have to split up. When Momo's gotten to her class, they got to split up. So they split up from one another. And we see Okuran as he gets to his class and all of his thoughts are of Momo and having this new friend and thinking about her and wanting to talk to her. And even though he's suffering the usual abuse that he usually gets on a daily basis, it's not really affecting him because he's having happy thoughts about his new friend. So we cut over to Momo and she is uncharacteristically quiet. And her friends, Miko and Kei, notice and they start to wonder what's going on with her. You know what I'm saying? So then we're cutting back and forth between the two of them as both of them are just basically thinking about each other and thinking about wanting to talk to each other and see each other and all of that while they're in class. So once class ends, they immediately go out looking for one another. But it's the funniest thing because they keep missing each other. Like, she goes to his class, he's not there. He goes to her class, she's not there. They pass each other in the hallway. They just keep missing each other. They literally just keep missing each other. So they've been missing each other. They're starting to wonder about the other one. Like, maybe I was too forward for Momo, or maybe I was too upfront or forceful for Momo, or maybe I was too nerdy or whatever for Okuran. And they're literally, while they're thinking this though, while they're literally sitting by themselves thinking about the other person and maybe how they fucked up the situation, they are literally right across from each other. Like, there's a hall separating them. It's actually funny. It's actually really funny. But we cannot get stuck here. We must continue, so we will. So as I said, they're both like right next to each other, but they don't notice because they're lost in their own thoughts. So as they're lost in their own thoughts, they begin to walk. But as they're walking towards each other without noticing it. And eventually, they bump into each other and accidentally kiss. So they're both flustered, immediately flustered, and they admit that they were looking for the other. But before this situation can go anywhere else, Momo's friends rock up and they have seen what has happened. And they're like, oh my God, y'all were kissing. If that's your type, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? But this causes Momo and Okuran to be even more flustered, and they start insulting each other and they get into an argument, and then basically they just end up walking away from each other. And they're like, okay, well, forget it. And they're both upset. So Okarun, he's starting to regret what's happened, and he's thinking it over as he's walking away. He has to go to the bathroom. He goes to the bathroom. He's in the bathroom, and while he's lost in thought, he goes to the urinal to pee. You know what I'm saying? And as he is going to pee, he notices that though his manhood has returned to him, he is now missing his family jewels. And this is where chapter 9 leaves us, with Okarun noticing that his family jewels are now gone. So, we're going to continue from here, but we're already on the path to where this story is going. So, let's continue. So, chapter 10. Chapter 10 picks up from Momo's perspective, and all the girls in her class are basically pressing her about the incident. And her friends are continuing to egg on the situation. They're like, oh yeah, that's her new boo, da 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 da, and calling him her babe and all this other stuff. And eventually he shows up and he's like, hey yo, and her friends are like, hey, your babe is here. And Okarun is saying like, hey yo, he's trying to give her signals. He's trying to let you, like, hey, we need to talk. It's important. Like, we need to talk right now. But Momo's not having it. And Momo is still in her upset mood. She's real stubborn. And Okarun, he apologizes because he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't really mean it like that. And he also ends up saying, because Momo, she brushes off the apology or whatever, but he also ends up saying that he's sorry because, like, if it's embarrassing for him to be her friend, then he'll just go back to doing what he was before, and he walks away. But that's when Momo's friend Miko tells Momo that she was too harsh on him, like, especially if they are for real friends. So we cut to later on in the day, and before we cut to that, this resonates with Momo. You can see that she's really mulling it over in her head. But we cut to later on, and Okarun is approached and flirted with by a random girl. And Momo sees this, and at first, you can see that she's slightly jealous, maybe. But as the girl who was flirting with Okarun and talking to him walks by her, she hears her saying she hears her bad mouthing Okarun. She's saying some foul things, and you'll see, I'll put the panel up there, but she's saying some stuff. Momo hears that. She doesn't like it, so she uses her powers to drop a pan on this girl. And then she starts bigging him up while she's walking by him. She grabs onto Okarun. She walks by the girl after the pan has hit her, and she starts bigging up Okarun, you know what I'm saying? Throwing shade at the girl. So I'm like, oh, okay, I see you. I understand what's happening here. But while she's doing that, she asks Okarun to walk home with her, and they do. So while they're walking for a bit, Momo apologizes for her behavior, and they start having a heart-to-heart. But this is all before Okarun can really reveal what the problem is. So at the end of the little heart-to-heart, he says, we got a problem. And then we cut to later on when they're at Momo's house, and she's laughing her ass off. Momo is laughing her ass off because at this point, Okarun has revealed that his family jewels are gone. And it's funny because Granny Ayase is scolding Okarun, and she was like, this is why I was trying to check before you left here the other day. So Granny ends up doing some spiritual examinations on him, and then she's like, tells Momo to go get a doll, it doesn't matter what kind of doll, and water in a wash tub. And then Momo asks why, and Granny Ayase ends up telling her, like, oh, because there's something inside of Okarun. So that is where chapter 10 ends, and we're going to move right into chapter 11. So it picks up with Okuran sitting in a chair, feet in a tub of water, and Granny Ayase asks Momo to put the doll on the table in front of him. So that's what she does. And there's a talisman that is placed on the doll. It's a 10 million Rio Lucky Cat doll. So, Granny Ayase has this giant fan-like thing. And she takes it and she smacks this nigga Okuran upside the head. And at first, Okuran is thinking like maybe this is a prank, like he doesn't know what's going on. But Granny Ayase explains that, hey, my bad, I was the prank. Granny Ayase explains and Momo confirms that when she struck him, his aura changed. And Momo is told by Granny Ayase, alright, I'm gonna hit him again. When his aura changes, I want you to use your powers and grab it and yank it out. So, this happens, and it happens successfully. And then the talisman that's on the doll begins to blacken, right? So, everybody's just looking at the doll for a second and staring at the doll. Talisman blackens. And then, all of a sudden, the doll just gets up and starts to haul ass. Like, haul ass. So the doll's hauling ass. They're chasing the doll. Ultimately, Momo catches the doll with her powers. And when they get to where the cat is, the cat begins speaking and making threats. As Okuran and Momo are confused about this, Granny Ayase tells them that this is the Turbo Granny. And of course, Okuran and Momo, they're hella confused. They're like, what? So, Turbo Granny explains how she survived by turning into her spirit form and then hiding inside of Okuran. And she planned on staying there until her powers could recover, and then she was gonna, take revenge. But Okuran is like, I'm not having this. Give me my family jewels back, or else I'm gonna put this talisman on you and destroy you. But unfazed by this, Turbo Granny is like, well, if you kill me, then you'll never get your, back. So she then tries to press her advantage and be like, oh, you know what? How about you killed these people, and then maybe I'll think about giving you your back. So she tries to press her advantage until it is revealed that Okuran is still in possession of her powers. And that's when Granny Ayase explains, like, yeah, what happened is your spiritual powers, all that's still in Okuran. The only thing that's in this doll body right here that you got is your consciousness, basically. So now, realizing she's basically powerless and that Granny Ayase is the only one that can fix that, she's kind of at their mercy. So Momo, being Momo, she actually strikes up a deal with Turbo Granny. But we're going to get there, so hold on. So yeah, Momo talking with Turbo Granny, they strike up a deal. Well, basically, if Turbo Granny helps to get the family jewels back for Okuran, then they will willingly give her her powers back. So they agree to that, and they're like, all right, well, where are they? And that's when Turbo Granny reveals, like, she's basically like, yeah, I would love to give them to you, like, right now, but I don't got them on me, chief. So this is where chapter 11 ends. And now we're going to start on chapter 12. So, chapter 12 starts with Turbo Granny explaining what they look like. And they're basically two shiny golden balls, 5 centimeters across, and they're going to be called Kintama. We call them the Kintama, and that's what they are known as, because we can't just be running around saying, So, Momo and Okarun are back by the train station with Turbo Granny Cat to look for and try and find these Kintama. And this is when Turbo Granny explains that, well, actually, somebody or something may have already took them due to the powerful life force energy that they emit. So she gets beat up for this, really, because she could have said this way earlier, but that's neither here nor there. So they regroup back at Momo's place, where Granny Ayase says she'll be doing some checking into things so while they go to school. She also tells Okarun to be careful because he still has Turbo Granny's powers in him, and nobody really knows how that's going to affect or react to things around him. Because basically, right now, I believe the trigger is his emotions. So, that's happening. Granny is going to look for information, clues, see if she can find out anything. Okarun and Momo are going to school. That's what's happening. So, let us continue. So, they have arrived at school, and we are with Okarun. Okarun is confronted by 3 boys questioning and talking to him about Momo. And they call her cute. And this makes Okarun kind of blush and start thinking to himself, and he's like, yeah, Miss Ayase is cute. That's crazy. I never really noticed that. That's wild. So he's kind of lost in thought, but the boys, they're still talking to him until they assume that they're together and all this other stuff. And then they ask him this. They're like, so you've done it, right? And that's when the crux of the argument comes in. They are basically trying to see if they can confirm this rumor that is being spread about Momo. And Okarun, W moment for Okarun. Okarun, he hears this and he is instantly mad. He defends Momo, but while defending Momo, he accidentally transforms when doing this. But he quickly calms himself down and then returns to his normal form, and then he's just like, my bad. So, while trying to remain calm though, Turbo Granny pops out of his backpack and starts teasing him, causing him to grab his backpack and run out of class. Turbo Granny tries to get Okarun to give her back her powers, but he's like, that's not happening, so whatever. Momo shows up, and Okarun is immediately flustered, and he's talking to her, but he's not looking at her, and she's questioning him on it, and then what basically happened, he ends up running away, and Momo follows him, and that's when Turbo Granny kind of goes off to do her own thing. But we cut to Momo later on after this scene has happened, and she's in class with Miko, and Miko asks what's bothering her. And Momo tells her that Okarun is avoiding her and is kind of pissing her off. So this is when Miko informs her that, hey, he's kind of a good guy actually. I heard that. And she gives him some more compliments, and this surprises Momo until Miko tells her that there's a rumor going around that he fought some boys that were bad-mouthing her. And Momo is surprised by this and also further confused on why he's avoiding her then. So then we cut over to the girl who was teasing Okarun. And she gives us this incredibly vain inner monologue where she admits to starting the rumors about Momo and explains that she can see Momo's powers, but she thinks that they're devil wings and that she's a devil herself. And the reason she believes that she is the quote-unquote chosen one is because a golden ball, one of the Kintama, fell on her out of the sky, and she reveals that she has Okarun's golden ball in her pocket. And this is the end of chapter 12. So, we're going to continue, going to move right in chapter 13. We'll be right back. So, chapter 13's open up with like a mini flashback, and we see how the girl, we find out her name is Ira. We see how Ira came into possession of the Kintama. She was at the train station, or walking past the train station the night that Turbo Granny was defeated, and this is how she came into possession of it. But we cut back to the present where her two lackeys come up and they're telling her, hey, we got what you asked us to get. So like what's going on? So Ira says she has some kind of plan and that she's destined to save the world because she's beautiful and all this other stuff. But then she notices that there's a lady in a red dress in the distance. But she's the only one that can see it. So she, thinking that she's still on this pursuit of justice, she believes that this woman in red that she's seeing is Momo's familiar. So, and that she's spying on him. But we cut back over to Okarun and Momo because they're now with Turbo Granny and they're eating lunch. And Okarun is still avoiding looking at Momo, which he's kind of peeved about and kind of calls him out on, but they move past that. And ultimately, Turbo Granny and Okarun end up explaining that it's possible that a human may have taken the Kintama as well. Not even knowing about its spiritual power, just based off the way it looks. It looks like a golden ball. Why would you not pick that up, you know? But this is a problem because anyone in possession of it will have their spiritual powers awakened, and that they will now be able to see spirits, and that if they can see spirits, that means spirits can see them, and they also might be attacked. And they also mention that there's a creepy woman who's been, around and just they've noticed. But they don't have any more information on it so far, but they plan on looking into it after school. So, we cut back to Ira. She's in class. She's thinking of her plan and how it can go off against Momo. And she's also thinking about the woman in red. And it's not a threat. And basically, she's off on her own little mini quest thing. So, we cut then to after school where Ira calls for Momo to have like a one-on-one talk, and she leads her off from where she's at with Okarun and Turbo Granny. So Okarun is told by Turbo Granny as they're walking off that Ira is the one that has the golden ball. So Ira leads Momo to a secluded location, and like right when they get there, Momo is attacked by Ira's lackeys. They tie her up. Well, they don't tie her. They zip tie her. And then Ira tries to kill her using a cross and a Bible.
Here we go again.
She basically came up and like, the power of Christ compels you, bitch. And it's funny. That gets way funnier than like, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just like, why? But this isn't doing what she thinks it's supposed to do. And as Momo uses her powers to dispatch of the lackeys, Ira tries to use the golden ball, the Kintama, to try and exorcise or kill Momo. And this just kind of annoys Momo because she's like, bro, we've been looking for this and you had it. So this is when Okarun shows up and he's trying to warn Momo that, that there's danger afoot. And Momo's like, oh, hey, she has the Kintama. She's the creepy woman. And then that's when Okaran's like, no, that's not the creepy woman. Ira is the creepy woman's target. And as he says this, we get Acrobatic Silky, the yokai, that appears and grabs Ira. And this is the end of chapter 13. We're going to go right into 14. Stay tuned. So, chapter 14 opens up with another little mini flashback where we see a young baby Ira grabbing onto this lady's dress and calling her mommy. We don't get a clear picture of the lady, but that's what's happening. We cut back to the present, and Acrobatic Silky has grabbed Ira, saying that she is Ira's mother. Okaran transforms and goes in to try and save Ira, but Acrobatic Silky sees him, and she's able to dodge. And Acrobatic Silky is taunting Okaran as Ira is surprised by Okaran's powers, and she's assuming like, oh, you're a demon too, and Okaran goes to attack again, but Acrobatic Silky is still dodging. And then, after she dodges a couple more attacks, she actually gets a hold of Okaran and tries to eat him. Momo tries to save him and is partially successful because he's halfway down her throat at this point. Wow. But she's partially successful, but notices that she has less control of her powers with her hands tied. This is when Acrobatic Silky tries to attack Momo, but she is able to form up with her powers and use it to block basically the brunt of that attack. But she is still knocked back. And at this moment, Acrobatic Silky takes advantage of that and just fully swallows Okaran. Then begins to talk with Ira, saying that she's waited to see her for 10 years, or waiting for her to be able to see her for 10 years, and that, she just wants her to call her mother or mom. So, Ira is shocked by this because she was still under the impression that this was Momo's familiar, which it's not. So, Acrobatic Silky continues to say like, oh, I'm your mother, and that she loves her, and she's asking her to call her mommy again. And this is when Momo interrupts, and she's telling Acrobatic Silky to give Okaran back, saying that the dead attacking the living is against the rules. And Acrobatic Silky replies to this by saying, well, we're just having an emotional reunion. So, Ira asks Momo what kind of demon this is, and that if she would cooperate her to beat it, to which Momo is annoyed but agrees. And then this is when Turbo Granny pops up, and she has Miko's phone, which Momo points out, and she's basically looking up information on Acrobatic Silky on the phone. So Momo asks, like, she's grateful for the information, but she asks, like, you're a yokai, why don't you know this? And Turbo Granny responds with like, I don't keep up with weaklings. I don't keep up with the weak and the young. Basically saying that she's on a higher level than this spirit, Acrobatic Silky. So, all of a sudden, Ira goes off on her usual rant, talking about I'm beautiful, I'm the one that will save the world, I will defeat this evil demon, and this upsets Acrobatic Silky, so she just decides, alright, well, I'm gonna eat you too. So, she eats Ira, and then she just swallows her whole, and then she starts running to attack Momo, blaming her for how naughty Ira is now. And she's upset because Ira called her a monster. So, Momo's left to face off with Acrobatic Silky by herself, who's attacking her with her hair. She's gotten a hold of her with her hair and wrapped it around her, and now she's just whipping her around because Momo's being defiant or whatever. You know, Momo's being Momo. So after whipping her around a bit, she gives her a chance to call her mommy, and Momo chooses to call her a moron instead. So this just Acrobatic Silky's had enough, so she swallows Momo whole too. But her hair is still attached to Momo. This is when Turbo Granny steps up and she's like, hey, you gotta release them and do what I'm telling you, and I might just forgive you because, you gotta respect me, I'm older. I'm an OG in this game. Then saying that her new form, the cat body, granted her a new power, the power of luck. And right as she's pointing this out, we see fire start to come out her mouth. And then fire just erupts from her mouth and face and then spreads across her entire body. And this is when Turbo Granny explains that Ira, the cross that she had, was actually a lighter. And because she swallowed everybody, Momo used it to set her hair on fire, saying that this whole thing was because of her luck. And as she says this, Acrobatic Silky throws all of them back up. And this is when Momo is talking over her and she says, hey, now it's time for a counterattack. Let's do this. So, that is where chapter 14 ends. We're now going to get in chapter 15, and we only got a couple chapters left towards the end of this arc, but this is where we get into some of the heavier stuff. So, let's go. Alright, chapter 15, Acrobatic Silky is no longer on fire, but she is now angry, and her hair is frizzed and frazzled, and she begins to lash out. She's lashing out at them for taking Ira. Her hair is messed up. She's been burned. Okarun at this point is transformed, and he's carrying Ira, who we assume is currently unconscious. And Turbo Granny Ira is currently, we assume, is unconscious. He's carrying her and Turbo Granny, and Momo is just running. They're all running. Now, Acrobatic Silky, she outmaneuvers them and then stomps on Momo and begins to pursue Okarun and Ira. Eventually, she lands a solid kick on Okarun, and this knocks him out of his transformation, leaving himself and Ira wide open to attack. So, Acrobatic Silky then proceeds to say that it's okay if Ira won't call her mom. It's okay if she doesn't see her as who she once did, but it's okay because she's going to become a part of her. And when she eats her, they'll be together forever. And she's going to chew this time to make sure Ira stays with her. So, as she's saying that, she's reaching out for Ira, but she finds that she is unable to reach her. And as she looks back, she sees that her hair is tangled up in all of the beams and supports that around the building. And this is when Momo mocks her and tells Okarun that he did a good job, as both of them are now back on their feet. So, they're now beginning to confront Acrobatic Silky, but she begins to break free. And Momo is like trying to hold her down with her powers, but Acrobatic Silky is struggling, and this is when she tells Okarun, you gotta attack. And Okarun's like, I don't know how. He's doubting himself, but she's like, you can do this. So that's when Okarun hits her with a full throttle headbutt. So he goes full speed, hits her with a full throttle headbutt, and that ends up defeating her. And Momo gives him a compliment, and Turbo Granny, she kind of berates him because she's like, oh, that's the best you could do with my powers? That's crazy. So they recover the golden ball, the Kentama from Ira, thinking everything's going to be cool, everything's going to be great. But before they can celebrate, this is when Turbo Granny tells Okarun and Momo that Ira is dead. And that's where chapter 15 ends. So, chapter 16, we start off with Momo and Okarun, and they're in shock, and they're like, wait, what? So they're trying to resuscitate her. They're trying everything. Like, they're talking about something. Okay, Momo, she's like, I'm gonna use my powers to start her heart, and like, you give her mouth to mouth, Okarun, and they're trying. And Turbo Grunt is like, it's futile. Like, once she was eaten, it's basically a wrap. Like, any normal human that gets eaten by a yokai, it's GG's for them. So as they are continuing to try and do everything they can to save her, this is when Acrobatic Silky comes up and is like, hey, there's a better way. Like, I can bring her back by giving her my aura. So, at first, Momo and Okarun, they don't really trust it. They're like, oh, or how we know, you know what I'm saying? But this is when Acrobatic Silky literally rips her jaw off and then hands them a steel beam and is like, you can squash my head if I'm lying. And Turbo Granny backs her up and is like, hey, without her transferring her aura to Ira, she's gonna stay dead. So this really is the only way. So they're asked how it's gonna be done, and they basically, Acrobatic Silky basically explains like, you're gonna use your powers to link us. You know what I'm saying? Grab our auras, you link us, and then I'll transfer my aura to her. So Momo's like, all right, cool. She tells Okarun, get ready. If anything funny happens, just, take her out. So Momo uses her powers to link their aura, and then is immediately flooded with the memories of Acrobatic Silky. Seeing the life that she lived with her daughter, what she did to provide for her daughter, how hard she worked, how she supported her daughter's dreams, and ultimately the cruel fate that befalls them. And this is where chapter 16 ends. So, we start off chapter 17 with another miniature flashback to when Acrobatic Silky first met Ira. And we see Acrobatic Silky, she's lost amongst the crowd. She's already a yokai, and she's thinking to herself, she's trying to remember something. And this is when a young Ira comes up and grabs her dress and mistakes her for her own mother. And this resonates with Acrobatic Silky. And this is when Ira's father comes up. And Ira's father is talking to Ira, and Ira's like, oh, I thought I saw mom. And Ira's father has to remind her, like, oh no, your mom has gone to a faraway place. And basically, he's doing his best to delicately remind his daughter that her mother's dead. And in Acrobatic Silky's confused state, she mistakes Ira for her own child, and from that moment forward was protective of her and felt like it was her duty to be protective as a mother for Ira. So we cut back to Momo, who is moved to tears, and Okarun, he's about to attack because he thinks something's wrong, but Momo tells him to wait, and Ira is brought back to life. Acrobatic Silky then begins to speak to Ira, apologizing to her for hurting her, and saying that she's gonna fix it, saying that she's gonna fade away. You know what I'm saying? And Momo questions this, and Turbo Granny explains that she's dying because she has given up her aura. And without the aura, there's no way to leave. There's no way for her to live. But because she's dying and she has regrets, she won't reach nirvana, saying that she'll be completely erased. So Ira hears this and looks shocked. And as Acrobatic Silky is fading, thinking of memories of her daughter and all the things she wanted to do and all the things she should have done, Ira runs up and hugs her, saying, "Mom, I love you." And this is when Acrobatic Silky remembers one of the happier memories she has with her child. And you see the disappearance flake, like her body is disappearing, but it changes to a different type of disappearing. Like she's achieved some sort of peace, you know what I'm saying? And before passing peacefully on, Ira says to her that she will never forget her. And then once she's passed on, she asks that her and her daughter be reunited in a much kinder world. And this is where chapter 17 ends. And this is also the end of the Acrobatic Silky Arc. Yeah, it got real heavy toward the end there, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we now have been through this, we've gotten through this part. We have a new ally, and begrudgingly or not, we have a new ally in Turbo Granny Cat Doll. And a new mission, which is to find and recover the Kintama, which we now have won. So, next time on Let's Talk Dan to Dan, we will be covering what I like to call the Serpo Strike Back. And this arc will include Okarun, Momo, and our newest girl, Ira. So, we will see you next time. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell and all that good stuff. And have a great day.